People should come back to the masterclass because a lot has happened in the last 5 to 10 years in the sustainability field. We have seen a lot of new regulations coming out of the EU in recent years, and I think this makes for a strong need for people to update their knowledge on sustainability. So this masterclass gives participants an up-to-date knowledge on the new EU sustainability regulations. In particular, we look at the framing of all these new regulations, which is the so-called EU Green Deal. And then we dig deeper into, for instance, the EU taxonomy framework, which is a measurement framework for what actually counts as sustainable. We look into a reporting framework, which is called the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and the associated standards, which companies now legally have to use from next year onwards. And we also look into regulations, for instance, that regulate what kind of green claims companies can make in the future. Of course, I mean, first of all, there is the direct knowledge of the regulations, right? I mean, this is something that participants can take home and they can connect it to their functions. So for instance, if you are in a finance functions these days or in a risk management functions these days, it is absolutely vital that you have this type of knowledge. And so this is one way to apply it. The other way, what we also quite a lot discuss in the masterclass is how do you actually implement these regulations? So there is a strong management dimension around this. Having regulations is always good, but you actually need to make them alive in the company. And we are discussing different ways, for instance, organizational structures and processes that would enable an organization really to take these regulations seriously. Yes, there are differences to what was, for instance, taught in the MBA program 1 or 2 years ago. And this is simply because these regulations move very fast. So some of the regulations didn't even exist 2 years ago. So for instance, if you look at the so-called Green Claims Act, which is an act which is supposed to prevent greenwashing. So companies from, I think, 2 years onwards, so 2026 onwards, won't be able to make any green claims anymore unless they have substantive evidence that these green claims are really backed by data that they have. So this, for instance, is something brand new that we didn't discuss in the normal curriculum. I think it is important to stress that this masterclass is not only for people in the sustainability function. These new regulations integrate companies quite a bit. So for instance, people in finance functions, risk management functions, strategy functions, they can use this regulatory knowledge quite a bit because it crosses their desk in one way or the other. And I'm sure a lot of our former students have already realized that things like the taxonomy or CSRD have crossed their desk. So how I run the masterclass, I think it is important to emphasize that we run this in a way that is very much discussion-based, right? So it is not that I sit there for 6 hours and go through different regulations, but it is really a conversation we are having within the group of people that we choose for this masterclass.